Hey everyone, talking about the top 10 best Tom Ford fragrances. Just my opinions. These aren't necessarily the most objective, but I do think all of these are pretty well respected, and also some of them are a bit more under the radar, so try to include kind of a good trade off there. Let's just jump right into it. These are in no particular order. One, Neroli Portofino, the Forte edition. I prefer this one to the regular Neroli Portofino. That one's great. It's still like, a classic and popular scent, of course, but this one is, to me, it's less bitter. There's bitter orange note in the original Neroli Portofino that is missing from here. And this still has that kind of fresh Neroli and clean, almost like laundry type of smell. But to me, this just feels a little more well-rounded, greener. This is a bit more masculine than the original, but it's still very easily unisex. And I would say most of the ones on this list are unisex, but I'll clarify if some are more masculine or more feminine. Next, very popular one, Oud Wood. I am normally not an Oud fan at all. I more tried this just out of curiosity. I just like to sample whatever I can. I did not expect to necessarily like it very much. And it's just so frequently mentioned. I was like, okay, I have to, know what this smells like. But I'm really pleasantly surprised by how relatively honestly like mass appealing this is for an oud centered fragrance. And I don't use that phrase as an insult. To me, that's a good thing if it smells good to a lot of people. This does not have an animalic oud vibe at all. Instead, it feels more like a cozy cabin in the woods, just really nice, and especially for colder weather, though some people do wear it in warm weather as well. Next up, Bitter Peach. This is actually pretty interesting to me, and I would say it's very, very unique. I see so many mixed reviews on it, including a lot. I've even seen people being like, it does not smell like peach at all. Now, things can smell completely different to different people's noses, but to me, it's definitely very clearly peachy, almost like, peach gummy rings combined with like an apricot type of osmanthus note almost. And I like, some sweet fragrances, but I think this might be too overwhelmingly sweet for me to want to wear. But it's really nice. It smells pleasant, welcoming, and luxurious at the same time. And it's cool to see a peach note so well done here that doesn't just smell too like babyish and sort of cheap synthetic type of thing. So yeah, I definitely think that one deserves the credit that it gets. Next up, Ombre Leather, the Parfum and the original editions. Really leathery. I mean, people often talk about it like, oh yeah, well, obviously Tuscan leather is really leathery, but Ombre Leather is so, easily wearable and everything. To me, I like it for sure. Obviously it's on this list. But just a heads up that to my nose and to a lot of other people, this is still very intense. This is not like some super tame, really soft leather that's so easily wearable even if you're not a leather fan or something. I outright get like a, gasoline type of leather almost from this. I don't consider it like super dialed down leather, but I do really like it. And I think if you like leather, that is definitely a very like good one that feels really smooth but intense at the same time. Next up, Lost Cherry. To me, I always think this opens like a Shirley Temple drink with extra grenadine and a warm almond cookie on the side, and then it kind of dries down to having more depth and spice and other notes coming in. I was a little hesitant going into it with how mixed the reviews can be and like, is this just going to smell like cough syrup? But to me, it's a good combination of memorable, enjoyable, and unique. And I think it's very easily unisex. Some people think it leans more feminine. To me, it could easily be unisex. Next up, this one was released this year, 2022. Noir Extreme Parfum. I like this better than the original, and I already like the original Noir Extreme, that is. I'm not a fan of the Noir EDT. I already think the original is nice, and this carries that same sense of like nuanced mix of sweet, spicy, woodsy, kind of powdery, and a little bit floral with a kind of gourmandy tilt almost at the same time. This one to me smells more like sexy and suave than the original. It's less gourmandy than the original and a little bit smokier, a little bit more leathery. It's like, yeah, there's more of like a dangerous edge to it, but it's still very, very wearable. My wife thinks it smells like brown sugar oatmeal. I think that's a compliment. It doesn't sound bad, but yeah. So take that as you will for that one. But I do think that this is really, really one of like a standout, like classy, smooth Tom Ford fragrance that also doesn't smell overly old school. Some of theirs smell like so almost inaccessible, like old school royalty, which I know a lot of people like that type of thing. I don't like those type of scents. This kind of bridges the best of all worlds to me for that sort of like classy scent. And that one leans masculine. Next up, another masculine leaning one, Grey Vetiver, the EDT and the EDP. I think definitely, an all-time great, one of the best vetiver fragrances ever. I don't think I put it in my top 5 vetiver fragrances list because I was trying to kind of, it's maybe not in my top 5, but I think it's definitely in the top 20 vetiver fragrances of all time. Vetiver can be off-putting sometimes, even to people who like it. It can just go so grassy, it can go oily, it can do so many different things, but the way that it's done here is really like rich and interesting. It's in the classy type of category, especially the EDP. That's a little bit more older smelling. The EDT is a little bit more youthful and fresh, but either way, just like classy vetiver scent that's just very smooth but not boring at all. And supposedly David Bowie wore it. Not sure how true that is, but I think his late wife may have said that. So next up, Rive d'Ombre. This is a really nice take on the astringent citrus green scent profile, and definitely one of my all-time favorite Tom Fords. So bright and pleasant, but it's also like refined and kind of captivating at the same time. So it's not just like, I'm clean. There's like something really interesting about it too. It just kind of has the perfect amount of fresh, sweet, green, and kind of a light kick to make it more unique. Really nice on hot days. And that one's more under the radar. I feel, I'm not trying to say nobody's ever heard of that or something, but I do not see that one talked about nearly as often as a lot of these other ones. Next up, Sol de Positano Acqua. Really nice, a lot less heavy-handed than a lot of other Tom Ford fragrances, even within the sort of more, sunny leaning side like this. It's not the most unique scent profile, very much in the vein of like typical Pedigree, Neroli, 4711 type of fragrances, but really high quality, really pleasant take on it. Just such a light and refreshing opening. It's just like so fantastic on a hot day. And last, Lavender Extreme. To me, this is very much a standout lavender fragrance that really leans into kind of like the relaxing, soothing, and authentic lavender side. It kind of to me just smells like a really, really high quality version of like a lavender pillow spray or something. There is like a sharper, fresher side to it as well, and kind of a soft powderiness. I like that it doesn't get too powdery, but it's also not like too dry or anything. It's still not something I would wear, but I really like the just relaxing and uplifting at the same time type of vibe. And as with most of these, I do think that's pretty overpriced. That one, for example, is like $400 for a 50 ml right now. But if we're just talking about the top 10 out of the ones I've tried, this is that list. And I would say I've tried somewhere between 40 and 50 Tom Ford fragrances. So not everyone ever, but also not just like, oh, I've tried 12 and here's, let me just exclude 2 from this list or anything like that. So if you have favorites, let me know. If I haven't done individual reviews of some of these, I'll do more in-depth ones and posting those. But these are my top 10. I think they're all really great for the different categories that they're in. And for the most part, except for some of the ones I mentioned of like Sol de Positano Acqua, most of them are really unique. And even the ones that aren't unique, they're not boring at all. It's just that they're not as much like, oh, I've never smelled anything like that before. But yeah, I'll put links in the description where you can get a bottle or sample of any of these in case you want to check them out.